Stretch this. It's like keeping a tree up.
At least through the new year.
I love it. Welcome in. It's not often that we get to chat with you on a Tuesday afternoon evening leading up to a couple of football games, but we'll take it. It's live before lock as myself and Neil, more importantly, Neil in the house here with a lot of information on this juicy 2-game slate with tons of drama, COVID narrative, injuries. You know, you would think that nobody's hurt based off all of the absences of COVID, but yes, people are banged up as well. We have some interesting narratives that are going to flow the games themselves, but also in these 2 games to look at, Neil, and it's a pleasure, my friend. I can't wait to do this show here with you. We have drama. We have some staples. We may have a punt or two we'll look at. This is not just a throwaway on Tuesday night, man.
Yeah, it's a really interesting slate. I don't know about you. Do you do any best ball?
I do, yes. Lofty got me in that at the start of the season, and I'm thankful because my one underdog best ball main, the big one, it moved on. So I'm looking to collect.
Are you looking to move on again? Do you have a shot this week?
I do, but a lot of it hinges on a guy that's not playing tonight. So we'll see. Okay, I actually do. I'm fifth in the group of 12, and I'm only like 60 points out. So I'm still hanging.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. That's all. Yeah. So I have a ton of best ball hinging on these games. I'm kind of bummed that they're not at different times, so I can't watch them both.
Right.
I think I only get the Philly Washington game here. I'd rather watch the other game, so that's a little bit of a bummer. But yeah, this is going to be a fun slate. I'm looking forward to talking about it. First ever show with Eytan, which is pretty fun as well. Should be a good one.
Absolutely, brother. I'm looking forward to it. I am curious, though, because I'm sure you're not the only one, I should say, in this situation here by any means. And if it's not best ball, then maybe it's the season-long week, or maybe it's just looking at a DFS tournament. Who are you getting the most return at? Like, who are you looking for the most right now in your best ball leagues teams in order to get something moving forward?
So strangely, I think it might be Rashad Penny. It's nobody who's really that I have super high expectations for. Actually, it's Cooper Kupp. I have 50% of Nothing Cooper Kupp in my remaining teams, but I assume everybody else does too. I haven't looked at each individual group, so I don't know exactly how much I have Cooper Kupp relative to the rest of the people. The guys that I'm really relying on are D. Eskridge and Rashad Penny. So good luck to me there, right?
Well, look, no Lockett tonight, so you may have an opportunity there.
That's right.
We'll talk about this. We'll kind of go through position by position. We'll treat it clearly like a live before lock show, even though you will have some time technically before these games kick off. And yeah, you mentioned it. It kind of sucks that they're both there. We got the stagger last night. Look, Tuesday night. It's not like people are jammed in with anything other than the NBA, maybe a sprinkle on hockey. You could easily get by, especially since one of these games is out on the West Coast.
Yeah, it's going to be yeah.
Unbelievable. All right, let's jump into it. Before we look at the slate itself, we'll start with some quarterbacks here. Neil, let's remind everybody about PrizePicks. Of course, just go to the bottom. We have a couple of links here you can take advantage of specifically with PrizePicks. Now, we've ramped it up. Not only are we going to match your first deposit up to $100, but we're also going to give you one free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. It is a live before lock, so all your questions, super chats as well, come out here with everything you got for Neil. And we start here with a super chat, interestingly enough here. Steve and C, we appreciate that. Season long for you. If you're holding out for Lockett, who are your top streams for today? If you can jump in and get anybody, and you can treat it pretty much like an alternate, even if it's in a DFS tournament as well.
Yeah, so we know that Lockett is out now. I'm assuming Van Jefferson is not available. The most likely that you'll actually have a shot at is probably D. Eskridge is the guy that will most likely be available in a season-long league off the top of my head. I'm looking through my list of wide receivers to see if there's anybody else who jumps out at me as might be available. I suspect Van Jefferson is not widely available.
Yeah, Quez Watkins,
Quez Watkins could be available. That's good. Freddie Swain. If Freddie Swain is available, I guess I would maybe take him. Well, we have D. Eskridge optimal more often than Freddie Swain, so he must be higher projected. I didn't actually look at the exact projections yet. So one of those two is probably the answer. Not really high probability plays, sadly, right. But you're kind of scrounging. 2 games left. Yeah, we've got Eskridge at 6.93 projection. We have Swain at 7.09. So I guess Swain is more expensive. That's why Eskridge is more often in the optimal. So I guess it would be Freddie Swain and then Dwayne Eskridge, but their projection is essentially identical. So take your pick.
Yeah, and I don't think Steven was looking for a lotto ticket here with your answer. I think he was looking for just maybe comfort in one of those 2 names as you reassuring it, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's look at the quarterback spot here. Look, we've got the obvious 3, and then you have Gilbert just thrown into the mix here, clearly because of what's going on in the COVID situation. I am curious how you even treat this guy who's started 1 game, right, in his career. You have everybody else that we're going to get to on this slate because of Stafford and Wilson struggling a little bit. And then Hurts, of course, going up against this defense should be a gold mine. I am curious, though, how you even approach Gilbert tonight, Neil.
I'll probably have some. So I'm just looking at the boom bust tool. So if you've been following my shows on Saturday, more recently, I've been emphasizing the top stacks tool on big main slates. Generally, I think it's more important on those large slates than the boom bust tool. But on a 2-game slate, I really think you need to land on the optimal lineup, especially in a bit large field GPP in particular. You need to land on the optimal lineup. So in this, I'm really focusing more on the boom bust tool than the top stacks tool. Gilbert, we have at 3.5% projected ownership, 4% optimal. So I'm not going to have a ton of Gilbert. 4% optimal is not a lot. You don't really need the salary savings. So he is a lot cheaper than the other guys, but it's kind of hard to spend your salary on this slate anyway. So you don't really need to get there. But because he is 4% optimal, my guess is I'll be 5%, 6%. There's slight positive leverage there. I think I'll get to some Gilbert most likely, but it's not a play I'm super confident in. Do you think you're going to be playing any Gilbert?
Yeah, I feel like you kind of have to, right? Especially with larger entries and, playing a lot of lineups here. That's also just the Eagles are not a great football team. Like I'm dealing with two things, right? I feel like the defense you can get to if planned properly, but at the same time, this isn't just a one-for-one swap on Washington. It's not just the quarterbacks are out and Gilbert comes in with a fresh team around him, even McLaurin, playing through injury. So I'm going to get to him simply because, to your point, the field is not going to get to him a lot, and it's a great play. And stranger things, I'm sure, have happened than Gilbert breaking the slate here tonight. Yep. But at the same time, it's kind of one of those things where I feel like the numbers are dictating the move, nothing about my gut or nothing about my feel to it, because I don't see Washington winning this game, and it's not the homer in me. It's just the reality of it, Neil. And I don't see a pathway in which Gilbert is throwing a bunch and completing a lot of passes and lighting up the scoreboard. But again, the low probability of ownership kind of mandates you take him.
Yeah, I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Just a low ownership. The Eagles are 24th in pass DVOA, so there's that. Gilbert had a little bit of success in 1 or 2 games last year with Dallas, so it would not be the craziest thing. As you said, crazier things have happened. But it just comes down to the ownership. We have 3 other quarterbacks who are just objectively much better in terms of what you would expect from them. But it's just 3.5% ownership for a quarterback on a 2-game slate is just incredibly low. You don't see that very often. So I think it's a play that makes some sense here.
And maybe even sprinkle a quarter unit on Garrett Gilbert plus 600 anytime TD. You never know in this game on a Tuesday night. That's the crazy dynamic of it. All right, so we cover the bottom there clearly with Gilbert. Let's go up there at the top. Of the 3 quarterbacks, I am curious because, again, on the 2-game slate, ownership, cost, maybe not playing that much of a factor outside, of course, if you have somebody on the complete end of it like Gilbert, where it's just basically telling you to play a couple of lineups. But with Stafford, Hurts, or Wilson, who are you having the most exposure to tonight?
My guess is that it will be Hurts. It's tough. Well, it'll be Hurts or Stafford most likely. It's tough because Stafford is objectively the best play, but he's also the highest owned. So currently in the boom bust tool, we have Stafford at 44.5% projected ownership, 42.1% optimal. So of the 3, he's the one who has negative leverage. He's also the one who is optimal the most frequently. So I'll probably be close to that 42.1% optimal rate for Stafford. I think for all of them, unfortunately, this isn't a slate where we have anybody who's really standing out as the field is getting it way wrong. It's pretty close on all 4 of these guys. So I'm not going to be too different from the field, I don't think. I think that I'll have plenty of Stafford, maybe around 40% there. Hurts, we have slightly positive leverage, 35.8% projected ownership, 36.4% optimal. I mean, that's kind of a wash. It's a pretty neutral play. But my guess is that I will get to around that number for that 36.4% number for Hurts. Maybe I'll get up to 40% with him. And then Russell Wilson, we have 16.2% projected ownership, 17.5% optimal. So a slightly positive play. Again, relatively neutral. It's really hard for me to get too different from the field. I don't really love any of these guys that much more than the field. Russell Wilson has by far the worst matchup. Otherwise, I would love to take some shots at Russell Wilson at 16.2% projected ownership. That seems like on a lot of slates, I would want to take advantage of that on a 2-game slate because he has upside. We've seen it in the past, but just the boom bust tool doesn't show that he's optimal that much more frequently than that projected ownership. The Rams are such a good defense. It's kind of hard to get too far over the field there. So yeah, I'm going to be pretty even with the field, I think, on all of these guys.
The one guy that I'm most curious about why you wouldn't be, and it's not that I disagree, but I'm just trying to further the reasoning here, Neil, is Hurts. And I think you can look at of the 3 and probably make the best argument. Doesn't mean that it's a convincing one, but at least the best one to be more overweight there. Doesn't even have technically the injury designation. And of all the bitching and moaning that went on here in Philadelphia about the game being extended 2 days, helping Washington get healthier, well, it really did wonders for Jalen Hurts' ankle. He was not going to play. I really maintain he wasn't going to play on Sunday, and now he is with no issue at all. Washington's defense is horrific. I understand they get Allen and Sweat back up front, but not many good rush defenses have been able to slow Hurts down on the ground. was there something specific or maybe just the slate that had you more towards the field and maybe not overweight to Hurts?
Yeah, I think it's just the slate. I mean, it's partially because Matthew Stafford just looks so good, and he is 400 more than Hurts, but that doesn't really matter that much on this slate. So Stafford is going up against the Seahawks, who are 29th in DVOA. Jalen Hurts is going against the Washington football team, who are 27th in pass DVOA. So if both of these guys should be able to do really well in these matchups, yeah, I agree with you. Hurts makes a lot of sense. You don't really need to stack him necessarily. I'll probably generally be stacking him with one receiver, but it's hard, partially because I also like the stack for Stafford a lot more. Again, I said I'm focusing more on the boom bust tool than the top stacks tool. I haven't built my lineups yet, so I could be off on what I'm going to end up doing, but that is where I'm at right now. Is just I will be, I think, slightly over the field on Hurts, slightly under the field on Stafford. It's just that they both look pretty good. And then Russell Wilson also, just because he's less than half of the projected ownership, the other two, and he is a guy that we've seen do it before. It's just hard for me to really just fade any of these guys. And I think that's kind of what it comes down to. That's the reason I'm not getting too different from the field, is because they all look relatively good relative to their projected ownership. So it's just hard. This is one of those slates that nothing really stands out.
All right, real quick, I see the chat here, and there was a little bit of a miscommunication. I blame Steven for infiltrating with the super chat on the season-long question. No, Neil never said that Van Jefferson is out tonight. What he said is he wouldn't be available to be picked up in the season-long league for Steven. Somebody miscommunicated that from you and then started this brush fire in the chat. So, no, that did not happen tonight. Van Jefferson is in. It was just a season-long question. I wanted to just clarify that because it's taken over the conversation in the chat, man. Yeah. And it wasn't your fault. All you did was answer the question.
I see Dave now saying Van wouldn't be available in season-long fools. My bet, that was me who said maybe there's a chance, but I said I don't think he'd be available.
Right.
So yeah, he is available on the slate tonight. He's not going to be available in your season-long. Thank you for clarifying that.
I love it. Just look, all we ask in return is that you hit that thumbs up button. Say we're not asking for anything more. We'll even give you one free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum and match a deposit of $100 when you sign up to PrizePicks. We'll talk a little bit about that coming up. And also, we each have a couple of player props that we're going to get to as we continue across all platforms here on Awesemo. If you're betting and you're not using Odd Shopper at all, then that's on you. We can no longer help you. It can only lead to a horse to water. All right, brother, let's move to running backs here. And we'll get back to the stacks here with the wideouts for sure, especially with the Rams, as you mentioned, with Matthew Stafford. But here, trying to take advantage of, again, 2-game slate and maybe a little more maneuverability. There is a lot of volatility in that Eagles backfield. You have Jordan Howard back, adding some more confusion to it. Although I'll say, and just looking earlier at Odd Shopper for Miles Sanders, based on Alex's projection versus where the books have him, I mean, there's a 20-yard gap in which Sanders is going to dominate the over at 55.5 to 75.5. But we also have, as your guy, Rashad Penny. So maybe this is just the personal need for Neil, who is speaking it into existence, that tonight's going to be the Rashad Penny slate night.
I'm going to try. I'm going to do everything I can to speak it into existence. Yeah, I'm not very confident in Rashad Penny. Unfortunately, against this Rams defense, I don't think he's going to do what I need him to do tonight, but I'm going to hold out some hope. Yeah, Miles Sanders looks phenomenal in the tools. We have projected for 37.4% ownership, 54.5% optimal. So we're assuming that Miles Sanders is still the bell cow. Now, it is interesting because the Eagles had a bye last week. 2 weeks ago, Howard was out. Boston Scott didn't practice all week because he had COVID, so he wasn't really involved. Kenneth Gainwell was the number 2 running back 2 weeks ago, and he did get involved some. It's kind of hard to really break down the Eagles backfield to really know what's going to happen there, because it seems like every week it kind of changes what they end up doing. But Miles Sanders, typically, if he's playing, does get the bulk of carries. I think we can count on that at least. It's just a matter of what percentage he gets. And he looks really great. I mean, we're expecting him to get the bulk of the carries. Like I said, he's in the optimal lineup 54.5% of the time relative to 37.4% projected ownership. So Miles Sanders looks great at 5,800 against the Washington football team. They do have a better rush DVOA than pass DVOA. Washington football team is 7th in rush DVOA and 27th in pass DVOA per Football Outsiders. So you don't love that, but Miles Sanders is just such an explosive player. We think that at 5,800, he's more likely to get there than not. So I'm going to be playing some Miles Sanders. Rashad Penny, yeah, just doesn't. He's playing against the Rams. We have him at a 24.1% optimal rate. So, he could get there. I have a shot, I guess, but 29.7% projected ownership. He's slight negative leverage there. So of the two of them in DFS, taking my biases out of it, I think I prefer Miles Sanders to Rashad Penny, but I'm going to be playing some of both of them.
Yeah, it makes sense, man, especially as far as what you have invested clearly with Penny, but also just no Collins and going up against in this matchup specifically. Miles Sanders, I'm with you as well. It's just, the volatility there is so tough to count on, but we know that the Eagles are going to run a ton. And as much as Jalen Hurts may run to take away some carries, Sanders has been consistent without Jordan Howard there. What about Gibson and no McKissick tonight? You're going up against a pretty decent availability, at least on that Eagles defense to run against. They haven't been as vaunted as they have been in years prior. So definitely Penny, definitely Sanders. Now, where else are you moving?
Yeah, so Gibson, he's at 6,000. We have him at 57.1% projected ownership, which makes some sense. Without J.D. McKissick there, you'd think that Gibson is probably going to get more carries, but he's only in the optimal lineup 38% of the time. So he's pretty highly negative leverage. You don't love that. Jonathan Williams and Jared Patterson, neither of them are even in the boom bust tool. So that's I guess tells you something about whether you should be playing them. But we do have Jonathan Williams projected for 5.21 fantasy points. He did have 4 carries for 16 yards and a touchdown last week, 1 reception for 19 yards. I couldn't find his snap share from the last game. I thought it was interesting that he is projected so much higher than Jared Patterson. Jared Patterson also had 4 carries for 29 yards and 1 reception for 9 yards in the last game. So I was hoping that I could find that. I was not able to find Jonathan Williams' snap share for the last game, but we have him projected for 5.21 points. So that strikes me as somebody who you might want to play in Showdown. He's the kind of player that if you want to go chalky everywhere and just go really low owned somewhere, you could consider Jonathan Williams at 4,000 in one of your running back spots, but that is only a milli maker play for sure. Really, really a long shot.
Real quick, Bobby Boom on the chat, just going back to the 2 that you opened up with, but now he's asking you to choose between Sanders or Penny tonight on the slate.
On this slate, I would choose Miles Sanders. If I had to only play one of them, Miles Sanders we just have as way more. We have him as positively leveraged, and we have Rashad Penny as negatively leveraged. We have Miles Sanders in the optimal lineup 54.5% of the time. Rashad Penny in the optimal lineup 24.1% of the time. So for me, it would be Miles Sanders.
No all-day AP in the house?
AP looks really good.
Chat's been asking for him, so we should give them what they want, Neil.
I mean, all day. One of the greatest. No. The greatest Vikings running back of all time. So I love all day. 2.9% projected ownership, 11.3% optimal. I'm going to hate it when he vultures Rashad Penny, but he did it on Thanksgiving last year, right? I think it was last year he had 2 touchdowns and just ruined the whole slate. We've seen him do it before. He's 4,400. Maybe Adrian Peterson can ruin the slate for other people again, but I think most likely Awesemo subscribers are going to be over the field on Adrian Peterson. So maybe he will salvage the slate for us. Yeah, 2.9% projected ownership, again, 11.3% optimal. That's one of the most positively leveraged plays on the slate. Hard not to love that.
Really? I mean, and outside of Penny, who else is getting the ball, right? So you know that there's going to be volume there that you can count on.
We've got DJ Dallas in the boom bust tool. So I guess 2.4% projected ownership, 2.7% optimal. So he is very, very slightly positively leveraged, basically a neutral play. So maybe he'll get some carries. But yeah, I would expect it to be Peterson at the goal line. Absolutely,
which is huge. And that actually factors into where I was going with Jordan Howard, because you really have 2 guys right now to look at for the Eagles. One, I have no freaking clue how he's going to be used tonight. Could be used extensively, could be down and basically be a healthy scratch in Kenny Gainwell. I don't know what to make of him. He's been so integral at times in the 2-minute drill, moving the ball in the air, yet he's also disappeared and not even played. And then there's Jordan Howard, who you talk about vulture, short yardage, especially goal line scenarios here. The coach and Nick Sirianni seems to really love Jordan Howard. We've seen him get action when he's been healthy. So the Eagles backfield, again, it's been volatile, and Miles Sanders is clearly the best talent-wise, but it's hard to factor in just how unknown, good or bad, Kenny Gainwell can be. And then also just the fact that the Eagles have gone to Jordan Howard when he's been healthy, especially for touchdowns and goal lines, short yardage situations.
Yeah, so the unfortunate thing about the timing of this show is that we end right when inactives come out. So keep an eye on the inactives, because that could really make some of these guys more. If Jordan Howard is out, that's going to make Boston Scott or Kenneth Gainwell a lot more interesting. If Kenneth Gainwell is out, Jordan Howard, Boston Scott benefit, obviously. So yeah, pay attention to look at inactives right when this show ends. That might change some things up a little bit. Currently, we have Jordan Howard, though, as a pretty solid play. So he is not as good of a play as Adrian Peterson, but we've got him at 6.9% projected ownership, 8.4% optimal. Like you said, he's a goal line vulture. Yeah, he's a solid play. He's positively leveraged. He's just not, you compare him to Adrian Peterson. Adrian Peterson's 100 more. Jordan Howard is higher owned and less likely to be optimal. So of the two, you got to prefer Peterson based on those numbers, but yeah, Jordan Howard, he's a solid play. He's the goal line back. It's kind of random. Who's gonna end up having the ball at the 1 yard line is probably gonna end up being the better play of the two of them. So yeah, I think Jordan Howard is also a solid play.
What are you doing? Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah. And then if he's out, Kenneth Gainwell obviously becomes more interesting. Boston Scott, I don't know what to do with Boston Scott. Boston Scott might become interesting. He could be the RB2. It's really hard to read this situation beyond Miles Sanders. And I think Jordan Howard is a little bit more projectable as well. It's just, if you think they're going to get the ball at the goal line and he's active, he's probably going to be the goal line back, but otherwise it's really hard to read.
It's incredible. I forgot even to mention Boston Scott, but he's another guy who just can't get away from touches. Yeah. Even when we've seen him out there, he's been a tough matchup at times, but again, Sirianni seems to love him, love Jordan Howard, not so much Miles Sanders. Before we move to the wideout spot, get back to some stacks as well. What are you doing with the Rams?
Man, the Rams are hard. So we have both of the running backs for the Rams as positive leverage plays. I'm going to be playing both of them. I'll probably be playing some lineups with both of them together. Obviously, there's some slight negative correlation there, but that's one way to get unique, and you do kind of want to get unique on a 2-game slate. So I'll probably have some lineups with the two of them together. We have Darrell Henderson, so he's 5,900 against the Seahawks. The Seahawks are 8th in rush DVOA and 29th in pass DVOA, so a little bit of a pass funnel defense. But still, I think that these guys are going to be just fine against the Seahawks. They have a pretty good rushing offense. Yeah, we have Darrell Henderson at 38.9% projected ownership, 51.8% optimal. Sony Michel at 24.9% projected ownership, 35.4% optimal. So both of them are pretty hugely positive leverage plays. Man, Sean McVay has said that it's going to be, I think he said it's essentially going to be a hot hand situation. He's going to feel it out during the game. I don't know what to make of that. We don't really know what's going to happen there. Maybe they split carries. Maybe one of them takes on the bulk. Really hard to read, but Darrell Henderson's going to be higher owned, and we think he's more likely to be optimal. So I'm going to be playing plenty of both of them. Do you think you have a read on the situation, or how do you think you're going to handle them?
I don't. And that's why I was selfishly hoping that you would give me one that I can go with, Neil, because I think you're right. It's really difficult to choose. And look, the hot hand shit can be coach speak, as we've seen plenty of times, right? To get a team prepared for both guys. And now all of a sudden you see Sony Michel. Like that would be, I think, the more realistic / unbelievable, if I can use the oxymoron, especially in the DFS betting world, where it's like, oh, yeah, okay, if Henderson's truly healthy, then he should get the lion's share work. They're both in, they're both up, and the next thing you know, Michel has 20 carries, and Henderson touches the ball 8 times. Like, that's what I'm expecting. I can't play that, but that's what I'm kind of expecting, is the opposite end of what we all built as a realistic game flow with this backfield. I don't believe McVay.
Yeah, I don't believe him either. I don't know what to make of it, because these are both talented running backs. They've both had big games this year, so yeah, I don't know what he's going to do. We can't read his mind. It's really hard to project this game. Yeah. I think that, but I think one of them is probably going to have a good game. So I'm just going to have plenty of both of them throughout my lineups. I'm probably going to have maybe 40% Michel, 60% Henderson, if I had to guess, and some of them will be overlapping.
Well, we're reminded by I'm a Tulsa dog on the chat. Henderson and Michel both scored last game against Seattle. So you may have your cake and eat it too. Neil,
That's right.
in that regard.
Hope so.
Yes. Let's keep it moving here. We appreciate everybody. New eyes coming in here as we keep it going, getting you ready for this 2-game slate tonight in the NFL. All we ask in return, hit that thumbs up button, please. And make sure you're subscribed here to the Awesemo platform. We've got PrizePicks matching your first deposit up to $100. Just click that link below. And on top of that, you're going to get 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. And it's a Taco Tuesday on PrizePicks, Neil. I'm not sure if you're familiar. People out there may not know what's going on. Every Tuesday, Taco. Now, this is a time thing. So if you're watching live, you don't have too much time. You've got about 90 minutes left to go with this, but they drop one prop significantly lower and give you that break. So PrizePicks is just over-unders. That's basically what you're doing. There's no juice. You don't have to worry about what you may be laying at the books. You should be going to Odd Shopper and using that free tool to combine what you're going to play. But, for example, the Taco Tuesday play tonight is they dropped Matthew Stafford's passing yards from 284.5 to 249.5. So that's an automatic over in that case.
Love that.
Exactly. Yeah. Then you can just match that up. You can go 2, 3, 4, and we were looking at a couple of plays off Odd Shopper ahead of time. You were pretty heavy on some wideouts.
Yeah, so I really like DK Metcalf. Just looking at Odd Shopper, I took the over on 69.5, a nice 69.5 receiving yards. We have project for 87.9 receiving yards and an expected win rate of 64%. There's no Tyler Lockett. I just think that he's very likely to go over that number, so I like it.
69.5. Now, PrizePicks has the same number, 69.5. You just heard how Neil broke down the projections that we have free available to you on Odd Shopper, where on site, Alex has them for 87.9 yards. Here's the beauty of it. You go to a book, you're going to lay juice, minus 120, 125. PrizePicks, you don't have to lay anything. You just have to make the bet. So that's why we always tell you all this stuff works hand in hand. It's amazing, right? It's just everything works in sync here. And I went with Sanders over 55.5 rushing yards just because, Alex has him projected 75.5. Same play that you can do as well on PrizePicks, where we have him at 50. Look at that. He's at 50.5 rushing yards, Neil, on PrizePicks. So if we took the Taco Tuesday, DK Metcalf, your play, Miles Sanders, my play, that's a nice little juicy payout right there. Not bad. Yeah, all three hits five times in return. We're making money on DFS and we're making people money on PrizePicks.
Love it.
All right, let's move to the wide. Speaking of DK Metcalf, let's go back and look a little bit here at the wideouts individual and also in comparison to what we talked about from the stack standpoint. You brought up Matthew Stafford as far as being the quarterback with the most appealing stack, meaning you have the most options here, clearly. So let's start with the Rams. Mention Van Jefferson. Yes, he's playing. Mention Van Jeff. Beckham is out there. And then, of course, the damage that continues to be done by Cooper Kupp right there at the top, who we have a monster projection for on site.
Yeah. So I want to say, I said in the quarterback section that I'm focusing more on the boom bust tool than the top stacks tool for quarterbacks. That is really the largest field tournament play. If you're playing smaller field, you might want to focus a little bit more on the top stacks tool. And there we have the Ram stack, 70.7% chance of being the top stack on the slate. So yes, Matthew Stafford is the guy that you go to in anything that's not a huge field tournament. And the receiving options obviously all look pretty good too. Cooper Kupp, we have at 99% projected ownership. Have you ever seen that before? I don't think I've ever seen that before.
No. And look, I get it's a 2-game slate, but even still, now I wonder, Lockett's out. I get it. McLaurin's banged up, but still, dare I say it's warranted?
I mean, it is. So we have him slight negative leverage. We have him optimal 92.1% of the time. That is even that might be more insane than the ownership projection.
You're right.
He is a slightly negatively leveraged play. If he gets hurt, there's going to be some 150 maxer who can full fades Cooper Kupp. And if he gets hurt in the first quarter, that person's going to win all of the money. That's not an approach I'm going to take today. I think that I will be probably close to the field. I'll be, I think, under 92% just because it's football. Things get weird. I think that if you're not playing Cooper Kupp, you're probably wanting to play other Rams players, maybe Van Jefferson, Odell Beckham. the running backs, just getting different. I heard on the show earlier, Jordan Vanek was suggesting if you're not playing Cooper Kupp, it makes sense to play the max number of Rams that are not Cooper Kupp, especially on FanDuel. You can only play 4, I believe. So it would make sense on FanDuel to kind of get different that way. Play 4 Rams players that are not Cooper Kupp, because that could be an interesting way to get different, take advantage of some of the limitations there.
Could you go both backs and then Van and ODB?
Yeah, I don't see why you couldn't. I mean, that is one of the few ways that Cooper Kupp fails, is if they just score too quickly with other receivers and he doesn't really have the opportunity to get a lot of catches, which can happen. This is football. It is very possible for even the best player on the slate to fail. It's just pretty insane to see a 92.1% optimal probability on Cooper Kupp. Hard to fade that. We saw Hunter Renfrow yesterday was in, not nearly. Hunter Renfrow is not Cooper Kupp. I want to be clear about that, but he was a player who had really high ownership and positive leverage, and he failed. So it can happen. And I think that there are ways for it to happen. I just think, man, it would be, if you did full fade Cooper Kupp, you are very likely lighting your money on fire. It's going to fail most of the time. The times when it works out, you could win a ton of money. That's just, it's a big risk. So just know, if you're not playing Cooper Kupp, you're taking a pretty huge risk, and it might pay off, but don't take it if you can't afford to.
No, I love that phrase, lighting your money on fire. It's the same phrase I would apply to Antoine Murphy on the chat. Betting wise, take the Seahawks +7. No, don't. It's a large spread at home, but Tuesday night, treat it like it's total disruption. Talent is going to win this thing. Seattle's struggling for a reason. Absolutely not. John Wick saying Seahawks getting blown out. Do you see either dog winning outright tonight? I am curious about that.
So I don't do a lot of betting, so it's not something I've given much thought to.
Just in general, doesn't forget the cover, forget the lines. Just take the cover and the lines. I'm just curious if you see either Seattle or Washington winning tonight in general.
I think that it would be more likely to be Washington for me. I think I would rather take Washington, just because Jalen Hurts is so sporadic. He can just have terrible games. Washington's pretty banged up, so it seems unlikely, but Garrett Gilbert could surprise us. He's had some success in the past. So for me, it would be Washington would be the underdog that I would be more likely to take.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. And look, I'm here. This is my team playing tonight. My guy, Jalen Hurts. But absolutely, it's a division game in the truest sense of these teams are much tighter. The gap is much wider between Seattle and LA. And we've seen a couple of stinkers from the Rams. This just doesn't feel like one of those games. This feels like one of these games where the Rams are going to do what they can to put Seattle out in the first half. Whereas I'm with you, man. I wouldn't be shocked if Washington's up 7-3 or something low scoring tonight, because the Eagles are going to run the hell out of the football. All right, so let's keep it moving here from the obvious with Cooper Kupp and the Rams there, mentioning, of course, going back to Matthew Stafford. Lockett is out. Wasn't a ton of love on the chat for DK. I'm assuming they were saying DK trash, meaning Metcalf, not DraftKings, but you never know. People had a rough night or week. They could be turning their aggression back to the site. Not a lot of love for DK on the chat, Neil. I'm curious where you stand with Metcalf tonight, especially without Lockett. Now, we're going to get to the tight end, because I know he's going to get, rightfully so, a lot of love and effort, but just curious with Metcalf first in Seattle.
So that is the sentiment surrounding DK Metcalf right now, and I think that we can take advantage of that. We have him projected for 44.3% ownership, even with Lockett out. So DK Metcalf is the clear number one in this spot. He is in the optimal lineup 58.4% of the time. That is one of the most positively leveraged plays on the slate. So I really like DK Metcalf in this spot. I get it. He has burned me a lot this year too. So I understand the sentiment, but just looking at the numbers, 44.3% projected ownership, 58.4% optimal, no Tyler Lockett. You'd think he's going to be the receiver that Russell Wilson is going to target the most. He's only 6,400. You're looking for raw points on this slate. A slate like this, you just need raw points. Salary barely comes into play. So yeah, I think that DK Metcalf is somebody that I'm going to have a lot of.
I love it. Fading the field. Nothing better than that, right?
That's right.
Now, you can't do that with Cooper Kupp, but you can.
It's tougher with Cooper Kupp, that's for sure.
Exactly right. Was there anybody else that, we mentioned Swain, but that was just in regards to what we were talking about with the season-long question. You also mentioned Eskridge there, but as far as just the 2-game slate itself, you do have McLaurin out there, even Devontae Smith. Like, I would love to get to both of these guys more often than I am. And I feel like I'm probably going to be underweight on both, Neil. But, McLaurin is dealing with the age-old issue of who your quarterback is. And Devontae Smith, as great and as talented and as special as he can be in this league from his route running to speed, there are times in which Jalen Hurts forgets he's on the team and he can disappear.
Yeah, and so Devontae Smith is a negatively leveraged play on this slate. Terry McLaurin is a positively leveraged play on this slate. I'm not full fetting either of these guys. I'm probably going to be relative to the field based on what the tools tell me. So the tools tell me Devontae Smith is projected for 33.9% ownership. 25.6% of the time he's going to be the optimal lineup. So I'm probably going to be under the field on Devontae Smith. I'm not going to get to 34% there. Whereas Terry McLaurin, we have projected for 14.3% ownership, but 19.2% optimal. My expectation is that I get above, I think, that 19.2% optimal rate for Terry McLaurin. I'm going to take advantage of the positive leverage there. It's tough. It's a 2-game slate. It's really hard to know what to do with some of these receivers. There's nobody that you feel super comfortable in, but guess what? Whoever wins tonight is not going to be very comfortable with their lineup. That's just, you got to play some uncomfortable plays on slates like this.
How uncomfortable. And this is a guy that I think can be sneaky good tonight, especially because of the disappearance at times with Devontae Smith, and that's Quez Watkins. As again, you're not really like seeking out to save money on this slate. So the cost aside at 3,700, he has been activated. He has that deep threat. And they also like to get him the ball quick on screens and stuff. So just receptions alone, he could be in the mix. Now, Dallas Goedert, we're going to talk about the tight end spot in a sec, Neil, but just kind of getting a little lower on the options below the top guys. Quez Watkins stood out to me.
Yeah, so Quez Watkins looks like a pretty neutral play. Yeah, he's 3,700. It wouldn't be shocking to see Quez Watkins end up optimal. We have him optimal 11.9% of the time. So it's definitely within the realm of possibility. We do have his projected ownership at 12.8%, so he's essentially a neutral play, very slightly negative there. I think that Quez Watkins is a fine play. That's the kind of play that you can get to be a little bit different. Jalen Reagor, we have him as a pretty negatively leveraged play.
Away.
Yeah, stay 12.2% projected ownership. So his projected ownership is pretty close to Quez Watkins. 12.2 projected for Jalen Reagor, only optimal 6.1% of the time. So not a play that I love. I do kind of like D. Eskridge. Maybe I'm biased because I need him for best ball, but the tool will support me. 11.8% projected ownership at 3,300, 16.2% optimal. They're going to need to throw to somebody other than DK Metcalf. They're probably going to need to throw a lot because the Rams are probably going to put some points on the board. So I don't mind taking some shots on D. Eskridge at 3,300. Freddie Swain, I think, is also a fine play. He is negative leverage, 17.4% projected ownership, 9.6% chance of being optimal. So of the two, I prefer D. Eskridge, but like I said earlier, Freddie Swain, we have projected for like 0.1 fantasy point higher. So it could happen. I think they're both fine plays in replacing Tyler Lockett. None of the Washington guys look that great outside of Terry McLaurin. Adam Humphries, we have projected for 3.4% ownership, 4.2% optimal. DeAndre Carter, 4.9% projected ownership, 3.7% optimal. We didn't really talk about Van Jefferson and OBJ that much. They both look like fine plays. So Van Jefferson's slight positive leverage, we have him at 47.4% ownership, 48.3% optimal. You can go there for sure. Odell Beckham, slight negative leverage. We have him at 60.4% projected ownership, 57.3% optimal. I just think that they're going to be throwing the ball a lot. That's typically what you can expect from the Rams. One of these guys is probably going to do well. I did lie before lock on the Monday Night Football show last week when the Rams were played and didn't really know what to do with the fact that Tyler Higbee was out. I thought maybe Ben Skowronek or one of these tight ends would get more involved. Ben Skowronek, I watching the game, I thought he had some opportunities. He had an end zone target. So maybe on the showdown slate, you can try Ben Skowronek and hope that he gets another end zone target. The last time pass interference kept him from scoring the touchdown, unfortunately. But he did not actually have that high of a snap count. So it's really only if you are playing all of the chalk everywhere else, you can consider him, but not really a recommended play on the 2-game slate, more of a showdown play. There's I think that pretty much
it's a lot.
does it for me. Yeah.
All right. So a question on the chat, and then I wanted to just further something that you referenced with Washington, because I agree with you, but I do think that there may be a pathway to somebody else. I just don't know who the hell that other person is. That's why we need you. All right. Thought Juice Poppy coming in strong. Should he start McLaurin or OBJ?
In a season-long league?
No, this is tonight. DFS tonight. Yeah.
Ooh, so OBJ, I guess it depends on the rest of your lineup. So OBJ is a lot chalkier and a lot more likely to be optimal. So if you have a lineup where everybody else is the chalk, I would probably play McLaurin, who has positive leverage. But just know, so Odell Beckham is in the optimal lineup 57.3% of the time. Terry McLaurin is in the optimal lineup 19.2% of the time. So Odell Beckham Jr. is a lot more likely to be in the optimal lineup, but he's also super chalky. So if you're going contrarian elsewhere, throw in OBJ. If you are going chalky elsewhere, throw in Terry McLaurin.
So the one thing I wanted to just bring back up was with Washington, because you're right. There's nobody that stands out from a talent standpoint that you would rush to, especially. And look, so much of this is predicated on Gilbert and the quarterback, and I get that. But Darius Slay is having one hell of a season, and I have no problem assuming that he's going to do work on McLaurin and he's going to limit what McLaurin can do, especially with the quarterback. But if it's Nelson or anybody else out there, they ain't that great once you get past Darius Slay. And I think even just being down a lot of points and Washington taking shots down the field, I don't know who that other person is, but I am not shocked by any means if Wednesday morning we're talking about fill in the blank having the day in the air, even though Washington lost from a DFS standpoint, because the Eagles defense doesn't really shut multiple receivers down. They do a good job with one guy.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. It's tough. It's just really hard to know who it's going to be. I think I'm going to have some of these guys sprinkled into my lineups. I'm going to have some Adam Humphries. I'm going to have some DeAndre Carter. This is pretty similar to a showdown slate where oftentimes I use the tools for the guys who have higher projections. I think that the tools, guys that play a lot, it's a lot easier for the tools to be accurate on what you can expect in terms of opportunities for guys like Terry McLaurin, Odell Beckham Jr. It's a lot harder to know what's going to happen with Adam Humphries and DeAndre Carter because it's just one or two plays here or there can completely flip how the game turns out for those guys. So those are spots where sometimes I go over the field on really low owned plays, even if the tools don't love them. And I think this is a spot where you can do that. Adam Humphries, DeAndre Carter. We don't know who it's going to be, but it makes some sense to play some of both of them. In the tools, Adam Humphries is the one who is positively leveraged. So you can, if you want to factor that in, he's projected for lower ownership and higher probability of being optimal than DeAndre Carter. So I guess Adam Humphries is the one that is a little bit more likely than DeAndre Carter. But yeah, you can sprinkle those guys in for sure.
All right, we'll keep it moving here. And again, hit that thumbs up button, please. If you're hanging with us, we appreciate you. We've got about 15 minutes or so. We're going to get to the tight end, of course, D and kicker before we get out of here. Questions that you have leading up to lock. Eric, now we talked about the running backs earlier, so if you popped in, you missed a position, don't worry. We'll get to as much as we can before we get out of here. Sanders or Michelle for you tonight?
All right, I'm going to go back and look at the tools. I think it's going to be Sanders because Sanders just looked really good in the tools. They both are positively leveraged plays for us in the tools. Miles Sanders is just, we have him projected for 37.4% ownership and 54.5% optimal. That is just hugely positive leverage. So I think it's Miles Sanders for me, but I think they're both really good plays. Robert
Chow asking, what's the projection for Penny tonight? Neil's hoping it's slate breaking. All right. That's all you need to
35. Know. We need 35 out of Penny tonight. What is the projection? I don't know that we should be giving out exact projections if you're not paying it, but I'll
yeah, you're right. No, that's a great point.
Should I not be?
Yeah, you know what? That's right. Go ahead. It's not like we're not giving out free months of Awesemo Plus Platinum to people. You know, it's one thing if we'd be stingy and not helping people come in. We're giving months away. Look, I'll tell you something I probably shouldn't. Go to one of the odds videos and watch that. Hit the thumbs up button. You're going to get 3 free months of Awesemo Plus Platinum signing up there. You get 1 free month here at PrizePicks. We're giving away free months. They can come on and absolutely. Here's the thing, though. You're behind Penny. So I think the mojo is there.
It's Christmas season, right? So Christmas season, I feel I'm in the spirit of giving. Until I get a slap on the wrist, I'll just give it to you. We have Rashad Penny at Awesemo projected for 10.33 fantasy points. So
there you go.
Not expected to have a great game. That would be enough for me in a lot of best ball leagues. So that I really hope he gets there.
Yeah, Treasure Warriors is right. We do give away ownership all the time. We're giving away free stuff during shows for you out there. Absolutely. Look, all we ask in return is that you hit that thumbs up. I mean, we're at 1,432. We're less than 200 thumbs ups. And as Treasure Warriors reminds you, we've been giving out free ownership projections. Neil is here giving out his thoughts. Yeah, everything is fueled by his own plays, but he's got the resume. We didn't pull him off the street. This guy's got the resume here to back up anything he's playing. So all we ask in return, there we go. We're over 200. We should realistically be over 500 by the time we get out of here. And I don't even think that's stretching it by any means. So let's hit the tight end spot, man. We'll keep things moving. And we talked about Seattle a couple of times over with the wide receiver position, not having Tyler Lockett out there. We should probably start with Gerald Everett, just as far as how much you're getting with him, especially in any quarterback tight end stack you may be running on this mini 2-game slate with Russ and Everett.
Yeah, so both of the Seahawks tight ends are slightly positive leverage. Gerald Everett we have at 32.6% ownership. Yes, I'm going to continue giving you the gifts of the Awesemo ownership projections and optimal lineup probabilities.
Love it.
Just in the giving spirit. That's what I do. Gerald Everett, 32.6% projected ownership, 34.7% optimal. So he is a positively leveraged play at 3,600 against the Rams. It's scary. The Rams defense is probably the best. It is the best defense of all of these, so it's hard to get there too much. But it's hard on this slate in particular because it's very possible that none of these tight ends put up 10 points, right? It's very possible that none of these guys do anything, and you just need a tight end who scores 3 fantasy points, and that could be, who knows who that's going to be. I think Gerald Everett looks fine. Will Dissly also at 2,500. We haven't projected for 7.6% ownership, but optimal 9% of the time. So also positively leveraged there. It's hard to break down tight ends just because they're all hit or miss. It's just a matter of who scores the one touchdown. Most likely none of these guys are going to go off. Yeah, I think both of the Seattle guys are in play. Dallas Goedert obviously is the guy who is most likely to put up a big game. He is the only real known commodity of these tight ends. But we have projected for 54.2% ownership, only optimal 38% of the time. So he is the most negatively leveraged tight end. Tight end is a spot where it's easy to get away. If you want to be chalky everywhere else, just throw in one of these other tight ends and you're going to get a little bit different.
Yeah, you're not saving any money here on this slate. It's not like you need to counter that by any means. So it makes a lot of sense. And, this could easily be a game too, where Jalen Hurts throws 16, 17 times. So, yeah. What do you and that's also limited guys who, if it's Dallas Goedert, Smith or Watkins or anybody else, but it's a likely variable. Now, again, it doesn't mean that it's going to happen 2 out of 3 times or anything along those lines. It's something that you have to factor in. And that mitigates, I think, just the rush for Goddard. Now, clearly, a lot of the field not taking that into consideration, but that's where we counter it here. What about with Washington? And again, I mean, this is just such a stretch here. So maybe you just hold your nose and hope you can get something out of this spot.
Yeah, so I think you full fade them on the 2-game slate and then 100% play them on the Showdown slate because we know about tight ends on Showdown, right? So you need to be playing Ricky Seals-Jones and John Bates on Showdown. These guys they're both guys that are unlikely to do anything, but if they score a touchdown, they might be optimal. We have Ricky Seals-Jones at 4.7% projected ownership on the 2-game slate, 5.3% chance of being optimal. We have John Bates at 4.1% projected ownership on the 2-game slate, 6.1% chance of being optimal. So they are both slightly positively leveraged. I'm going to be sprinkling both of them into my lineups. They're, again, a good way to get different if you're going chalky elsewhere.
Yeah, man. That's the thing, is just trying to figure out, especially where else you're going chalky, and then just trying to get, if there's a value play or just get any deeper. So we talked about Everett, Dissly, clearly that Washington Philly game. Now we just look at the Rams side, but even that would be like such at Blanton, 2,500. Now, again, you've got a 9-10 game slate here. You're dealing with the same exact scenario that the Rams are dealing with without Tyler Higbee. I imagine Blanton is a hell of a play as a punt option. 2-game slate, though, how much does that mitigate you getting to a guy like Blanton on the Rams, just simply because they have to have somebody line up at that position tonight?
Yeah, I mean, that's right. So going into the last Monday Night Football show, I didn't really know who was going to be the guy between Blanton and Bryson Hopkins, who was going to be the tight end to get more opportunities. Blanton ended up playing 90% of the snaps in that game. He had 3 targets. He's 2,500 against the Seahawks. I think Blanton is definitely a play you can get to, but the field is also getting there. He is projected for 28.6% ownership. He's optimal 27.7% of the time. So slightly negatively leveraged there, but I think he's a totally fine play if he's going to be getting 90% of the snaps again. Bryson Hopkins is a guy, I wrote down the name, even though he didn't get too many opportunities last game. He did get some snaps in the last game. He's going to be 0.1% owned maybe. So on a slate like this, I've done crazier things. I'll probably play a couple of shares out of 150. But again, that's only the largest field. Blanton seems to be the guy there. I think he's much more likely. So I'll be getting to some Blanton for sure.
So a question on the chat, and it's specific to the Rams, but it's also an interesting question when you look at the rarity, if you ever have a 2-game slate or something like this, shorter slates for whatever reason. Maybe it's Thanksgiving Thursday or Saturday where we see 2 games. We'll see it again Saturday as well. So maybe this is a good question to keep an eye out for on Saturday when you have these mini slates. But 5 Rams too much from Joe on the chat, and just kind of looking at slate specific, Neil. I get it. Not everything is always going to be constant, but when you have a slate like tonight, where do you look at getting to too many guys?
I don't think you worry about it. I think it's totally fine. I believe last year on a slate like this, a 2-game slate, somebody won the millie with 6 guys from the same team. It might have been, one of them might have been the defense. So really, what is that? 16 guys from the same team. So yeah, you could definitely do it. Not something I'm going to be doing a ton of, but that's a good way to get unique. Not many people are going to do it. A lot of people will set limits on how many players you can get from the same team. But yeah, on a 2-game slate, if you want to go Rams onslaught, especially, I think that's totally viable. Yeah, I think it's totally fine to do on a slate like this.
All right, Steve on the chat. And again, hit that thumbs up button, please. 1,500 watching. We should be well over 500. We're here for you, helping you out, making you some money tonight. Quez Watkins or Eskridge, DKGPP from Steve.
It's Eskridge for me. He just looks a lot better. He's really positive leverage. So yeah, give me Eskridge.
Yeah, and I don't hate Watkins by any means. If you were looking at a guy, we talked about him on Philadelphia, but look, man, I'm not getting in the Neil train. I'm not getting in the way of your train tonight, man. If it's Eskridge and Penny, then I'm riding full. I'll be thinking about you as Eskridge hits his 3rd touchdown and cashes that plus 5,000.
I'm going to advance so many teams if he does. Yeah, I mean, to be clear, both of these guys, it's not like Eskridge is a much better play than Watkins, but he's slightly lower owned, slightly more likely to be optimal. And he would really help my best ball team. So let's go D Eskridge.
All right, let's keep it moving here to the kicker defense. We'll wind down with these 2 more questions. Of course, we've got a couple of minutes here before we get out of here. And don't worry, you're going to have plenty of NBA content coming your way just after we get off. Lofty and Adam, then Eric and Greg, deeper dive live before lock. You even have an extra 30 minutes with Eric and Greg on an extended live before lock. So we're just getting you ready to go here. And by the way, I was looking up that Blanton anytime TD, and I was pretty surprised. He's at plus 250 as an anytime touchdown score, which is not fantastic value. Like I was expecting the books to have him somewhere around, 450, 500. But to your point, that goes right back to the snap count that he has. So the books like him to be involved. Not always the best correlation, Neil, but the books like him at the same time. There.
And he had 3 targets, so yeah, I guess. And he's a tight end. Tight ends usually get targeted more in the red zone. So yeah, if Vegas likes him, it's a good sign, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, let's look at the defenses first here. And if there's an angle where somebody stands out, I would imagine the Eagles, simply because of the quarterback and the fact that you're going up against a guy who has far less game tape than any of the other guys out there tonight.
Yeah, so I mean, the Eagles are the most likely to be optimal. They're also the highest owned. It's similar to the quarterbacks in that they're largely just owned about where they should be. So we have the Eagles owned at 50.3% of the time. They're optimal 49.6% of the time. Pretty neutral play. They're definitely the cash game defense, I think, if you can afford them. I think they're likely the cash game defense or the small field tournament defense. They're just the most likely to get there for sure. The highest, actually, the Rams are the highest projected. Am I reading this right? I'm seeing a 7.5 projection on the Eagles and 8.3 on the Rams. Huh. Interesting. Okay, so it's the deviation there is a little bit different. So maybe the Rams are they're cheaper and higher projected. So I guess maybe the Rams are the cash game defense there. So I'll take that part back. But yeah, the Eagles are likely to, 50% likely to be optimal, 50% owned. The Rams we have at 27.2% ownership, 26% optimal. So again, slight negative leverage, but pretty neutral in general. The Seahawks are only optimal 1.8% of the time. That is pretty baffling. You don't see that. Like, defenses are so random. That really surprises me. That I guess goes to show how good the Rams offense is, how bad the Seahawks defense is. That's really, they're projected for 5.2% ownership, and they are a negative leverage. So that's pretty insane to me. You could just full fade the Seahawks defense, I guess, take them out of your pool. And then the Washington football team is the one defense that does have positive leverage. So I guess they make the most sense in large field GPPs. They're 2,500. They're projected for 17.3% ownership, optimal 22.6% of the time. So I guess the football team is probably my favorite of them in terms of large field GPP defenses, but they're owned about where they should be.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, Washington's getting two guys up front. Allen's having a hell of a year. Sweat's a force. And the Eagles have been up and down offensively. And they've put up a lot of points. They've put up very little points. And the volatility there could easily fade in there, especially because it's Tuesday night. And neither one of these teams are 9-4 or 10-3 and world beaters out there where you think, it doesn't really matter. Scarecrow 06 on the super chat for 2-game slate. How many offensive players versus defense would you typically allow when building your rosters, Neil?
I said it at like 4. Like I just don't even worry about it too much. You could do lower in a large field GPP. I think it makes sense to just have a high number and hope things get weird.
Now, I need to know a little bit more about this. We only have a minute anyway, so I'm not going to get an answer here. But according to JG on the chat, every time Greg Olsen does a game, a tight end scores a touchdown. So take that into account for DFS and anytime TDs, because I'm going to do that there. Now, which game he'd be doing? The Fox game, right?
Maybe. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Maybe JG can answer.
Okay, that's fine.
I don't remember. I know that I've seen him, but I watch everything on Hulu, so I don't know where the networks come from.
I'm on YouTube TV, so there you have it as well. I did see one question on the way out here, and it regarded a non-traditional stack. And if you looked at, it was Everett and Philly D or Goddard and Seattle D from Cheesy Wings, Neil, on our way out.
Philly or Goddard and Seattle D. Probably Everett and Philly D. Okay. I don't have a strong lean there.
Okay. All good. They're both on Fox tonight.
Did you? So. Okay. All right.
Yes. There we have it. All right. At Player Q DFS is how you follow Neil on Twitter. Make sure you thank him for winning you some money. You can even thank him ahead of time for winning you some money. You could also hit that thumbs up button, please, on your way out, as we really appreciate you hanging with us. And thanks to Tyler. Make sure you thank him in the chat here before we get out of here for producing. Look, we'll be back more, hopefully Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday Night Football. We'll take NFL any way we can get it. You've got NBA content, the deeper dive with Lofty and Adam coming your way right now. Appreciate you hanging with us.